First, I just want to say how incredible, how healing it is to see everyone here this evening. I'm brought back to the Shabbat after the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and I remember there was fear in coming to synagogue, and there was also a need to be in synagogue. And to know that our community has that need, can meet that need for one another, with one another. It's why we're here, and I know it's what we all needed tonight. Before I continue, for parents of younger children who maybe haven't given details about what's going on, I will be talking a little more about the past week, so I'll leave it to each of your discretion. Israeli journalist Ben Caspit posted a video on Monday of an angry restaurant owner. The state of Israel is at war, we hear the voice on the video say in Hebrew. And I sent 2,000 hot meals to the soldiers in the south defending the Gaza border, but the army wouldn't take them because I don't have kosher certification. Can you believe it? And then he says something that I don't understand in Hebrew, but I can't imagine that it's words that I'd be able to say in the synagogue. The restaurant Ha'achim in Tel Aviv, meaning the brothers, is owned by brothers Asaf and Yotam Doktor, and it's one of the more popular restaurants in Tel Aviv. Ha'achim caters to the city's more secular population, and like many nicer restaurants in Tel Aviv, it's open on Shabbat, and thus is not kosher. Now, the video was posted in a Facebook group to which I belong, and members immediately posted in a tone very similar to the brother in the video. Surely there were more than 2,000 soldiers who weren't concerned about kashrut, who would have loved a meal from one of Tel Aviv's best restaurants. This was just one more example of a lack of respect for non-Orthodox Judaism in Israel. And then, after a couple days, someone else posted in the comments section a new article. The headline read, "Upscale Tel Aviv restaurants go kosher for the first time due to Hamas invasion." Sure enough, what did these brothers do in response? Yes, they were initially angry, but rather than let that anger keep them from their desired act of loving kindness, they brought in the Orthodox rabbinate to clean and inspect their kitchen, and they resumed their tzedakah. And what did the Orthodox rabbinate do? They too looked the other way, granting a temporary certificate through Friday, knowing that the restaurant would be open on Shabbat again. It was very frustrating for us, and we didn't understand why it happened, Yotam Doktor said. But this war, like all the wars until now, will be won by Israeli society. One of the reasons we got into this situation is because Israeli society wasn't united. If we don't wake up and come together, our situation will get even worse. The IDF reflects all of Israeli society. I wanted to begin my remarks this evening with this story, and I'll come back to it later. But knowing what to say this evening on the Bima was difficult. Where do we start? After this past week, where do any of us start? I woke up Saturday morning with a text from Rabbi Weiss. Had I seen the news? I hadn't. But I soon found out that hundreds of Israelis had been killed in an attack out of Gaza. War had been declared, and while the words, "not again," were probably the first to come to my mind, I never could have imagined that "never again" would become the words. as it became clear that the Hamas attack against the Israeli cities and kibbutzim outside of Gaza this past weekend was a pogrom, the deadliest attack against Jews since the Holocaust, as militant terrorists went home to home, killing and kidnapping as many as they could. Now knowing that over 1,200 Israelis were killed indiscriminately, with over 150 being held captive or still missing. Never again were the words, knowing that had Hamas been able to kill more, they would have. Then we started to hear the stories. I joined a webinar Monday put on by the Reform Movement, and I heard journalist Amir Tibon tell the story of waking to sirens Saturday morning at 6 a.m., taking his wife and 2 young daughters, both under 4, into their safe room, assuming that an incoming rocket launch was on the way, only to hear gunfire, first from the street, then in the homes of their neighbors, then in their own home. Tibon told the story of his father, a retired general in his 60s, driving from Tel Aviv to the kibbutz on the Gaza border. His mother taking injured soldiers to the hospital on the way. His father joining another retired general in 2 armed fights with terrorists on their drive. Ultimately joining with a small group of soldiers to enter that kibbutz, going from home to home battling the remaining terrorists, ultimately saving his son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughters, and many others of their neighbors, while they all mourned those who were not saved. The story is remarkable. We're sharing it with our teens on Sunday, and I'll make sure to find a way to share the video with all of you as well. Throughout the week, I've called many of our congregants, learning of our community members who have family and friends that have been killed or kidnapped, others who were at the Nova Music Festival where over 250 young people were killed in the largest single terrorist attack in Israel's history. Some are still missing. Others who are part of the IDF who will be risking their lives in the coming weeks, potentially months. Members of our larger Jewish community who had served as lone soldiers were called to rejoin their units and flew back to Israel on Sunday. Others living in Israel who are safe in their homes but continue to be sent to bomb shelters periodically. I joined many of you Tuesday evening as over 1,000 of us joined in solidarity to gather, to pray, crying along with so many of our Israeli brothers and sisters who live in Tampa. I went to USF Hillel to spend time with their students and staff. After fear of a bomb threat cleared the building on Wednesday, even when they found that that specific social media comment was taken out of context, it didn't alleviate the fears of our Jewish students of a campus that seems to have turned against them. They told me how hard it was to see a sorority sister who they thought was truly a sister posting on her social media and attending rallies in a way that seemed to not only show compassion toward the Palestinian people, to whom this student also showed extreme compassion, but toward Hamas itself. Doesn't she know that Hamas would kill every Jew in Israel if they could? Doesn't she know that Hamas would kill me if they could? The students told me of the hateful speech, both in social media and in person, that has been directed at them. I spent time with the teachers in our Amy Gail Buckman preschool, many of whom are not Jewish. And while they've joined us over the years celebrating Israel on Yom HaAtzmaut, we wanted to explain more about the background, what our families might be feeling in this moment. I knew that they too would see those social media posts, and I wanted them to know that they could come to me with any questions. I wanted them to know that in the coming days and weeks and, God forbid, months, the news was going to get worse, as Hamas will use innocent Palestinians as human shields, willingly sacrificing their own women, children, and elderly to continue to hurt Israel's image, indiscriminately killing their own, just as they did the Israelis last weekend. And today, I stood outside our building along with Mark Levine and the most amazing security team on the planet. As I shared with our teachers, our security are not just folks putting on their uniforms and coming to do a job. They're members of our family who view us as members of their family and protect us as they would their own families. We stood outside as our staff, teachers, and students arrived on a day on which we knew that a call had been made to globalize Hamas's acts. And while the high fives from our youngest students brought me momentary respite, even joy, on a terrible day, I knew how many were feeling so alone today in their fear. And this was when I returned to the story of Ha'achim and the Doctor brothers. We are not alone. And while there are so many things that we could argue about, ways in which I hope we can have meaningful dialogue and learn together in the weeks to come as we follow the news and try to process not only for ourselves, but for others in each of our own circles who are looking to us for explanation of that which cannot be explained. We have to be there for each other. 2,000 meals were thrown into the trash can, and they went right back to trying to help. Over the coming weeks, we too may feel like our efforts are going right into the trash. But if we quit, if we give up on each other, we add to the destruction of those who seek to destroy us. Tomorrow morning, Noah is going to talk about the creation story in Bereshit, the beginning of the Torah that we read this Shabbat. And he gave me permission to give a little spoiler alert of his Devar Torah. Noah is going to share with us a brilliant teaching of the tohu vavohu, the chaos, the void and darkness with which the world began, before God gradually brings order into the world. Our world right now is chaos. Our world right now lends itself to make us feel that we are in the void and the darkness. But by supporting each other, by standing by our achim and achot, our brothers and sisters in Tampa and across the ocean in Israel, we pray that standing together will take us through these days. And God willing, we too will find a sense of order from out of the chaos. God willing, we pray that a leadership will emerge in Gaza, replacing Hamas, that as Golda Meir prophesied, will love their children more than they hate ours. And we will move, we pray, that much closer to our own seventh day, to a Shabbat, to a time of peace. May this be God's will.